think about, I mean, if we let governments do what they are doing right now and we don't question it and we don't say, listen, we don't agree with it, we have a voice, we stand up against this tyranny, or basically they're taking that, they ignore our basic liberties. I'm born with certain liberties given by God, but not by the government.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. Before we begin this really important interview with Claudio Grass, I just want to let you know, today YouTube removed a video I released on March 25th called Unlimited Printing. Do you know how this story ends? Now, they say it violated their terms and conditions and community guidelines, but of course they don't specifically tell me how. So I think the truth media is now under even increased scrutiny. I heard today from my friend Sarah Westall that her entire channel has been demonetized now, out of the blue, and that just happened today as well. So a special thanks to our patrons for keeping us in this fight for real news and truth. And if you'll just give me a minute, a quick word from this interview sponsor. Collagen may be the closest thing we'll ever get to a real fountain of youth. In fact, many health experts now agree that consuming collagen is as crucial as it gets to renewing and revitalizing how you look and feel. Collagen is the most abundant protein in your body, and it essentially is the glue that holds you together. In fact, after age 20, people produce about 12% less collagen in their skin each and every decade. This means by the time you're middle age, you could be producing less than half the collagen you did in your youth. Even worse, things like poor diet, smoking, pollution, and yes, stress can delete your collagen levels even faster. So visit my site, healthwithsgt.com, and purchase the only collagen on the market that I trust. Make your hair healthy and younger looking, support joint flexibility, it strengthens nails, teeth, and gums, promotes strong, healthy muscles, tendons, and ligaments, stronger bones, and supports digestive health. Support your health today with collagen. This is my trusted source. I'll leave the link below this interview. And welcome back, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have on the line Claudio Grass. His website is claudiograss.ch. And boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Is Trump secretly taking over the Fed and nationalizing it? Is there good news on the horizon? Or are these trillions upon trillions upon trillions in new stimulus going to be the death nail for the dollar and for the republic? Claudio, welcome back.
Hey, always a pleasure talking to you, Sean.
Always a pleasure talking to you, my friend. So, as you know, there are many different theories about what's going on right now. And as we're having this conversation today, silver is at $14.20 per ounce, and gold, the paper price of gold, is at $1,605. Before I get your thoughts on the Fed and nationalization of the Fed or ending the Fed or any of that, can you restate what you just said before I hit record about you've never seen anything like this in the gold market?
Well, I'm in the gold market for the last 10 years, basically. But I have, the partners I'm working with over here in Switzerland, and that Switzerland has always been, the biggest gold trading hub worldwide. So I have one of my partners. He used to be, in New York during the 80s, the 90s, leading, the precious metal desk for UBS and other big gold players back then. So he knows, he has seen everything over the last 40 years. And he basically told me last week that, he hasn't seen anything, it's unprecedented in history. They had so many trades a day. They even achieved their budget for the whole year. It just showed last week we got the proof that, the safe haven still, when people get nervous, it's physical gold. So that was a huge run. And then, of course, last week, the gold market had to be shut down on a global scale. I was always able to get some gold, but the big issue was that, when you are a precious metal dealer and you sell gold to customers, at the same time, you have to hedge yourself because you cannot take the risk, to sell something which you don't know what the price will be in the future. And those kind of prices were missing in the physical gold market because of the whole situation. There's a huge scarcity. As you know, 70% of the gold is going through Switzerland. So we have 4 refineries basically taking that job. Right now, 3 of them are closed because they're all in the canton of Ticino, which is close to Italy. And so they decided 2 weeks ago to shut down non-existential businesses, and therefore all the refineries was also affected by that decision. And so, yeah, at the same time we have, because of a global shutdown, I mean, all the logistic chains have been broken. So it's pretty hard to get gold in. I mean, it's going now. I mean, over the weekend we received some more, but so some people have some gold to sell, but the disallocation is quite big, and it's pretty hard to get white metals, silver, platinum. That can be an issue. But all the bigger players. I mean, there is one big player in Germany completely out of stock. They have nothing to sell. It's a physical precious metal dealer. So we don't know how long the situation will last. But physical gold is scarce, and the paper price, the paper, let's say the paper certificates for gold are just huge. And I always expected, under certain circumstances, that the physical price is going to separate from the paper price. And this is what is happening right now. Also not huge for the time being. I mean, we are talking about maybe, when it comes to coins, of course, then you have to pay 10, 12% up price in the past versus maybe 2.5% in the past. But the bars still, it's possible, but I think the longer the crisis lasts, the whole people, what I'm witnessing is that because the gold market has been shut down, so there was, taking out some steam out of, the breakdown, the engine, and now, of course, markets recovered. So in combination with Corona, which is completely fear and control, people are paralyzed. So they are waiting. They don't act. The majority, they understand something is fishy, something is wrong, but they don't know what exactly stands behind this global shutdown. But I think more and more people are going to wake up over the coming weeks, because, we are still in the same modus, and we don't know how long, governments are going to shut down, and limit our freedom of movement, breaking down on our civil rights. So, I think the longer it goes, then we might see that people try to go back into gold if there will be still some available.
Well, they're already talking about another stimulus package here in this country on the back of the 2.2 trillion stimulus package that's going out right now. But let's dig in a little deeper to the gold story. What are you hearing about the LBMA? Because what we're hearing in recent news is that the COMEX does not have enough physical bars on hand to satisfy delivery for those standing for delivery. So the LBMA has been asked to fill those delivery needs. And then the deeper we dug into that story, we were hearing that the LBMA just wanted to keep the physical in the vaults and then just change the title of ownership. Again, isn't this hypothecation and more rehypothecation? What are you hearing about the LBMA?
I know that, London still, I mean, the transport which came into Switzerland, basically because you cannot deliver to the refinery, so you need to have fabricated bars. So quite a chunk came from London, from Bank of England. That's at least what I heard from my partners who are in that business. COMEX, I mean, it's, the whole financial system and all these paper claims in the financial system, the leverage in the financial system. As long as the system is running, you can play around, you can sell, stuff on paper, but it has nothing to do with the physical good. It's a matter of time. I mean, COMEX definitely will break down in the future. We don't know yet when it will be, but at least when people asking for physical delivery, then they are going to face the truth and the whole situation. But it's just a side. It's just a side. The system is not going down because of the gold market. This system is just going down because of political action, which is completely unprecedented in history, going through a global shutdown of the economy. Everyone that believes that you can shut down the global economy for a few weeks or months and it has no big impact, I think it's not connected to reality, especially when the whole system is so highly over-leveraged. that we always expected, crisis. I mean, what is happening right now is basically something a lot of people always expected. The only stuff which really should make us think is that it's a controlled demolition of the stock market, because it has started off because of political actions that decided, we have to shut down the global economy. We know that there is a crisis coming out of it, but we try to be in control. At least that's the way I understand it. Right. Because the whole situation, the mess we are in has been created by central banks and the governments over the last decades. And so Corona now has been abused as the scapegoat, to start the correction and, to let the avalanche run and see what's coming out of it. But people will blame it on Corona and maybe on the Chinese. Mm-hmm. So it's a good excuse.
Well, let's talk about scenarios and how this plays out, because I think there's two distinctly different schools of thought on this whole thing. So let me try to summarize this in a way that makes sense. So I do trust the president, and I do believe that President Donald Trump is the right man for the job. I'm glad he's in there, obviously, compared to Hillary Clinton. So my take on this has been that we, the people, humanity was rising. There is a real great awakening around the world. Brexit is evidence of that. The Hong Kong protests, evidence of that. The rising note of patriotism in the United States, a move towards sovereignty, is evidence of that. And so my take has been, based on a 2010 document from the Rockefeller Foundation titled Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development, down on page 18, they talk about lockstep, more top-down authoritarian control. And the whole document, at least starting on page 18, is about a global pandemic, right? And this was from 2010. So here we sit in 2020, and we're seeing that unfold. So now the question is, as the Fed prints trillions, the question is, can we end the Fed? Can we nationalize the Fed? Can we take this thing back? Can we end the practice of central banking in the United States? And how does that look? What does that look like from your view, Claudio? I should add that just the other night, Bill Still, the producer of the Money Masters, said yes, he thinks this is possible, that Trump is in the process of ending the Fed or nationalizing the Fed and returning the power of printing back to the Treasury. He calls it monetary reform. So it's all a little fuzzy and nebulous right now. What are your thoughts? Is it possible that this could be a way to end the Fed?
At the end of the day, if you are a central bank with the monopoly on the money supply, and you can basically create it out of thin air, does it make, it's a huge centralization of power, of course. So I know the Fed has been privately owned, and now some people are saying that Trump is going to nationalize it. I mean, the Swiss National Bank is owned by the states. I think there is 5% which is owned by some other people, but the majority, 90% is owned by individual states in Switzerland. And our central bank is as insane as, the Federal Reserve. I mean, it's not that powerful, of course, it's not so relevant, but, just because you exchange the heads on top of a centralized institution, and think about Karl Marx. Karl Marx and his Communist Manifesto was always the number 5 point of the Communistic Manifesto was total, control, total credit, owned by, issued by a centrally owned central bank, nationally owned central bank. So that's, even if Trump would nationalize, I mean, the Fed, at the end of the day, they were all only able to, in the past, after the First World War, they were only able to buy a sovereign debt. So it was kind of nationalized anyway. I mean, central banks, private or in the hands of the state, are as evil and toxic as, if they would be owned by whoever else. So okay. I don't believe it makes a difference.
Okay, well, because here's the issue. As I've tried to break this down in my head, I'm trying to figure out how this plays out and how this ends, because I don't think a lot of people necessarily understand that the bond market is far and away larger than the stock market. So we're talking about trillions upon trillions upon trillions of dollars in debt, bonds, and it's not all owed to the Fed. It's not all held by the Fed. It's held by pensioners. It's held by people with 401ks and IRAs. It's held by baby boomers who want to retire. The bond market's huge. So what I've really struggled with is, how does this thing end in a good way for the American people in the dollar? I don't see how you can wipe out existing wealth and just write it all off and start over and everybody's still where they were. So I'm really struggling with that. So you process that while I play this soundbite. This is from my friend John Titus. His YouTube channel is Best Evidence. And his March 29th video is titled, "Why is the Federal Reserve Lying About Coronavirus?" I'll play this and hopefully you can hear it.
Okay.
The previous balance sheet high was $4.5 trillion, set back in 2015. It thus took the Federal Reserve 100 years to get to $4.5 trillion, and we have now blown past that record by 15 or 20% in the space of 2 weeks. Something is going on. I think even the casual observer would acknowledge that much. Now, the Fed says, and you know this is coming, right? The Fed says it has to do this because of the coronavirus. And the coronavirus has harmed Main Street, and the Fed needs to print up all this money and ease credit conditions in households and businesses. And that's why it's taking these unprecedented steps with regard to monetary policy on its balance sheet. I am here to tell you that is a big fat lie. It is arguably the biggest lie ever, given the sums of money involved.
I'll pause it there. Could you hear that okay, Claudio?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the reason I wanted to play that for you is just so that we all kind of understand what's really going on here. So the coronavirus is being used as the excuse. You said it early in the interview. It's being used as the excuse for all this printing because the banks, many banks, Deutsche Bank in my opinion in particular, but other banks have been in trouble and have required bailouts, secret bailouts in the repo market, etc. So is this whole thing being used to just simply bail out banks and in the process destroy the economy? Is the whole thing essentially a false flag?
I truly believe that this world will look completely different in 6 months' time. I don't know exactly how it will look like. I mean, it's always hard to predict the future, of course. But, we all, especially your listeners, we are talking about, it's impossible that you just can print out of thin air, fill up, society, everything with debt, and one fine day, and even having negative interest rates. It's completely insane, and we also lost the measure. The Fed injected now two trillions. 1 trillion in seconds are representing 31,709 years. And we basically injected over the last 10 years, roughly 140 trillions of additional credit only. So, those figures are completely insane. It's completely inflationary. I used to count at the school, up to a few 100,000, millions and so on. And my kids, they come home and they're talking about trillions and billions, quadrillions. And, I think this is the side story. This world, this system is going down the drain. You cannot halt the global economy for several months in a highly over-leveraged system. And right now, Corona is the scapegoat to start the crisis, to let the system correct, so that the people don't blame it on the central bankers and all the government agents who basically are responsible for the whole big mess that we are in. But on the other side, what we are witnessing is a nationalization of the private industry. This will be the basis for. We heard about universal basic income. We heard about the new modern monetary theory, so we can print as long as we own the money to ourselves. This is all bullshit. This is all fake theories. It's collectivistic by heart. It's going against the individual. It's about total control. And this is I think this is the real agenda that is going on. We have to look into China. Because the Western world the way they treat or they solve the corona has been, they copied it from China, one-to-one from a communistic regime, which is locking down their people, total surveillance. They have WeChat, they have crowd control, they have mass surveillance. You get the rating system. I mean, if you're a good Chinese, then you are green. Maybe, you know, if you drink too much alcohol or you smoke too much, then you go into yellow or whatever, and then you have red. And this is a social ranking which is implemented in China already. And that's the stuff which is coming, because now we have heard, you know, that Italy also implemented the same. I mean, all this facial recognition and all that stuff, but they use technology, 5G technology, to verify where are the people who had contact with whom. We can listen, you know, they are saying all the data, information will be, you know, we're not going to listen to the phone calls, I mean, that's what they said in the past as well.
Right.
So, I mean, Italy is now implementing that. The European Union decided that they will be able also to use the technology to basically avoid that infected people could, you know, get in touch with other people that might then also be infected. So it's a great controlling system for the benefit of the people. And I think this is absolutely insane. It's total nonsense and bullshit. But you know, that's at least what I'm seeing. If they can keep the system alive, then they will switch to MMT, universal basic income. I think, you know, mass control, crowd control, and then they have it under control. Maybe that's their agenda. I don't know. It could also go the other way around, that we just, you know, the system, we know it is breaking down.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing though. So help me war game this. All right. Put on your white hat. And because what we're hearing from the Patriots and many people who are following Q is that President Trump is in control. The Patriots are in control. This is going to be used to end the Fed and return some form of honest money to we the people. So just help me war game this, because again, I don't really fully understand how this thing plays out. Where do the trillions of dollars go? In a best case scenario, just help me understand how we could do a reset of the system that returned sovereignty and honest money to the people. So think about that, because I've heard back now from many people in the space I respect. I've heard back from John Titus, Tom Woods, Rob Kirby. I've heard back from Cynthia McKinney, David Morgan, my friend, author James Perloff, who knows all about the bankers and the central banks. All these people do. I've heard back from Spiro Skoros, Greg Reese, and Charles Pixley, and David Jensen. And almost to a man, none of these people believe that the Fed is going to be nationalized and this is going to end well for the people. So the argument from the Q side is that we need to trust the plan because the president is going to make that happen. In your view, wargaming that for us, how does that look? How could that look? What happens to all the pensioners and the trillions in bonds? How does this thing end in a best case scenario? Can you envision one?
You know, it's all hot air. I mean, you know, pension funds are, you know, all these unfunded liabilities. You know, I mean, Kotlikov came up 10 years ago already, you know, with a figure that is the unfunded liabilities, all these promises by the government when it comes to healthcare and, you know, pension fund and all that stuff. I mean, it's 20 times bigger than the official debt. I mean, the money is not there, you know, it's just people still believe in it because we are still in this system, but this system is shutting down. And, you know, if you want to look, this is all about subversion. It's a huge sociological experiment, what we are witnessing right now. You know, they are shutting down the global economy because of a flu called Corona, and they use it as a scapegoat. And they also know that we are in a world economy which is, highly leveraged. And if you just shut it down for a few months, you know, it's impossible to, you know, that everything goes on like before, you know. So to me, I mean, this world is going to look like completely different in 6 months' time. I don't know if you're going to end up with these systems which are now being implemented based on, you know, the Chinese model, the Chinese democracy. That might be something in combination with, you know, I don't know, gold-backed renminbi, you know, what they used to work for, or an international, an SDR, global coin, digital coin, where they know exactly where you spent the money, with whom you interacted, total surveillance. That's at least, you know, the risk I see at the moment, because it's going in that direction and they use the new technology. And at the same time, the internet, I truly believe the internet, every coin has two sides. So one side of the coin, that's the evil side, that's the Chinese model. Everyone can Google and can see what's going on, what kind of system they have there. I mean, it's reality. And the other side, of course, is because, the internet had no Steve Jobs and no Bill Gates. It was not invented or controlled by somehow. I mean, it just, it was quite anarchistic. It came into existence, and the basis is still peer-to-peer and it's open source. And now you see companies popping up like Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin has no CEO. It has no corporate headquarter. It's a digital currency which can be traded on a global scale on an international level. You never had that before 2009. It's fully operating outside the banking system, independent of the banking system. So, it's a digital asset, it's a digital nothing, but I truly believe in the future it makes sense to have this money which offering pseudo-anonymity so that you can regain certain, liberties that you have lost in your digital world. And the same, of course, goes for, I think now it's a time for private currencies, gold-backed digital currencies, which can be traded outside of the banking system. I mean, I truly believe, we haven't seen, the panic in the stock market yet. I mean, it was just a normal reaction and everyone was occupied with Corona. People are paralyzed, so they don't act. They don't understand what's going on. I mean, we're going to see, I mean, this is just the beginning. It's not the end. So, I mean, the next downtrend will come. Might be that we're going to lose in the first correction once it's closed, 60, 70%. I don't know. But I think that's absolutely likely. So it's important that you have, stuff which is not in the banking system. And right now, I mean, you have to destroy an old system to make a new one. And I think that's also happening. So I don't even believe that, this new system, if China is becoming, the new dominant person on the global stage, I mean, forget about the US and also the US dollar as a world currency. It will be crashed completely.
You said something really important, and I don't want to forget it. You said you have to destroy a system to create a new one. So I think we can all agree that's what's happening right now. For those of us filled with hope, for those of us who want to trust the plan that this is all being done by design to take down the Fed, it needs to be said, you have to destroy a system to roll out a new one. And what I've been saying, Claudio, is one of two things is going to happen. Either we go into a more tyrannical top-down control system, which is exactly what the bankers want, citing that 2010 Rockefeller Foundation document. People need to remember who owns shares, who owns the Federal Reserve. One of the families that own shares in the Federal Reserve is the Rockefellers. So it seems to me they're kind of getting what they want, and I hope that we can extricate ourselves from this. I know that if Hillary Clinton was in the White House, there would be no chance. With Donald Trump in the White House, maybe there is a chance. And again, Bill Still recently made a video saying, is Trump destroying the Fed? And then he said, yes, he thinks that is what may be going on here, and monetary reform is what's happening. I, again, just don't understand how this ends with the trillions. How does it all just get wiped away and we all walk away? Are they going to wipe away all our debts? Do the mortgages all disappear when they do a reset? I got this email from my friend David Jensen, who wrote, Sean, it appears to me that the Fed is providing dollars to buy assets, but with Treasury direction. Whether the Fed holds the assets or the Treasury does not matter. It appears to me to be the start of nationalizing the economy, socialism. And he went on to say, the Fed needs to be shut down and those Federal Reserve notes, those debt notes, taken out of circulation. Sound money reform and one-time debt write-down essential to stabilize the economy and take U.S. monetary control out of the hands of the money center banks. Nationalizing the economy leads to a socialist police state. So I read that to you, Claudio, because I think within it is a lot of wisdom. And David Jensen is saying, yeah, one of two things could happen here. But if we tilt towards socialism and universal basic income and shutting down the economy permanently due to coronavirus, then the bankers get exactly what they want.
Hey, I mean, yeah, I mean, at least these centralized players, now it might move to big tech, big data, that kind of stuff. I mean, maybe we might even end up without having nation states, or we might end up with regimes in certain nation states who are everything under control, and they will terrorize their own people. Um, Look around you. I mean, so we really, I mean, I have never been more uncertain about the future than today, but I truly believe that the whole system, whatever we know, I mean, one person's wealth is another person's debt. And we are in a debt, in a credit-based system, which is over-leveraged. And now we basically shut down the economy for several months because of a flu. So I think, people should really shape their perspective away from having fear in terms of this flu, because think about, I mean, if we let governments do what they are doing right now and we don't question it and we don't say, listen, we don't agree with it, we have a voice, we stand up against this tyranny, or basically they're taking that, they ignore our basic liberties. I'm born with certain liberties given by God, but not by the government and not by the state.
That's right. That's right. I just want to make a point here. So for anybody who's called me a fearmonger lately because I'm concerned about these two different scenarios and I'm concerned about how this is playing out, I just want to say that I agree with you 100%. And what I'm concerned about with this idea of trust the plan, the Patriots are in control, don't worry, President Trump has this, the Fed is being nationalized, all will end well. What concerns me is that the Patriots, the ones that should be screaming the loudest about what we're seeing with the trillions in printing by the Fed and this top-down control system that appears to be rolling out, which is essentially socialism, people are being silenced and people aren't screaming from the rooftops, right? Remember in 2008, 2009, the Fed bailouts caused a lot of people to get angry? What did we see? We saw protests in New York City, right? That went on for months and months and months.
But they will come.
Sean. We're not seeing that now.
Sean, they will come. As I said, I mean, right now people are paralyzed. I mean, even when I talk to the people here in Switzerland, it's pretty interesting, because when I go to the butcher and, to go sell groceries and so on, I always approach different people I don't know, and I ask them, hey, what do you think about what the government is doing? Are you happy with it? And so on. I mean, I tell you, most of the people still believe, it's insane. And they don't understand what's going on, but they also cannot grasp what that means in the future. So they are completely paralyzed. They don't act. They are just, they're listening to this mass media Muppet show about Corona and this deadly virus, and that's in their spotlight. But I tell you, I mean, if we're going to see in the next few months, when they restart again, then we're going to hear, 10,000 employees fired over there, 100,000 there. We have unemployment rates. I mean, Bloomberg had an article today from the US government. They're expecting 30% unemployment rate. And when you look at, the unemployment rate in the United States based on the methods they did it back in 1980 without massaging the data, you already have 20-21% unemployment. So, the US might end up with 50%. Switzerland might end up with 30% unemployment rate. People will then realize when they see that only a few people died because of Corona, that it has not been more than an average flu, because when you look at the figures today and you compare it with the data we have from the past, I mean, why they haven't shut down the whole world economy in 2009 when we had swine flu, which infected 700 to 1.4 billion people, 210,000 people killed because of, died because of swine flu, and now we are talking about 730,000 infected on a global scale with 35,000 deaths. I mean, only the CDC, which is a private organization as well, but it comes over like, government agency. I mean, they just reported October to February 2020, 13 million Americans got the normal influenza and 12,000 people died. So, I mean, in the future, people will realize that the whole mass media propaganda was bullshit. Shutting down the economy was a very bad idea, because right now, I mean, what are the governments doing? They are they shut down small shop owners. They shut down the whole tourism industry. You know, if you have a restaurant, if you have a hotel, something, I mean, all that was a sound backbone of quite within, you know, sound people within quite some nations, people who had their own business, who were living, you know, away from government, not depending on their subsidies and so on, entrepreneurs. I mean, they're all screwed now. I mean, you know, because of a political decision, they have been, you know, their existence has been questioned, and right now they have to apply for the credits from the governments, and you know, they are now enslaved and indebted as well. And these were always people who were crucial when it comes to government power. And so, you know, this time is really, I mean, this is really different from my. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I'm really hoping I'm wrong.
I hope so too.
But I don't believe that this is the case. So therefore, you know, if the people, you know, if the people act like sheeps and they still believe that there will be a savior, a messiah coming in the form of Donald Trump or whoever, I don't believe that you can expect anything good from those sociopaths at the end of the day.
Well, let me show you something, my friend. Here's the problem. And again, I'm not being a gloom and doomer. I'm taking a look at the facts and I'm trying to process the facts with people that I've known for a long time who know a lot about economics and precious metals. You're one of them. All right. So let me just do a quick screen share and show you something. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That is the March 27th magazine cover for The Economist magazine. Now, The Economist magazine is part of the Rothschild portfolio of propagandist tools. And I just think it's real interesting. Everything's under control as you see the big giant hand in the sky leashing a citizen wearing a coronavirus mask who's walking his dog wearing a mask. It's all a big joke to them. And they say everything's under control. Big government, liberty, and the virus. Now, I haven't dug into it. I haven't read it, but I just think that that picture speaks 1,000 words. And it reminds me of the 2010 Rockefeller Foundation document, Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development, page 18, lockstep, more top-down, authoritarian control. So we can debate all day long about how this ends for the dollar and the Fed and the Treasury and honest money and sovereignty, etc. But it just seems to me that these people have played a pandemic card, which was in their portfolio of cards to play. And the pandemic card is giving them a lot of what they want. So if we, the people, don't stand up and march in the streets and scream from the rooftops, they may take away our freedoms permanently. And that's not being pessimistic, it's being pragmatic. And we'll circle back to you, my friend, for your final words. I guess you've said a lot of wise things on this already. What do you make of that Economist magazine cover?
The people who believe that the nanny state will take care of them, the people who believe politicians, the people who are frightened to take self-responsibility, most likely a lot of these guys might end up, you know, in this. I mean, you know, we have global problems today. You know, man-made CO2, terrorism. Now this pandemic, you know, nation state cannot deal with it. It's a global problem, so we need a global solution. Therefore, we need a global government that can take over the action to protect the people from, you know, from the evil.
That's right. That's in that Rockefeller document, by the way. That is the crap they're selling to the people. They want to use fear of all of these things: terrorism, climate change, pandemics. They want to use that fear as a tool of control against us. You're absolutely right.
It's, I mean, yeah, you know, the oldest agenda was always fear and control. And that's what we are seeing. And the other one is divide and conquer. And that's what we also see, you know, people witnessing, they believe, okay, we have to self-isolate at home. If we see more people gathering, I mean, you cannot even hold demonstrations because, you know, if you're more than 3 people or so, then you might end up, you know, people, I mean, maybe the police in the United States, because they have been trained by, you know, all these numerous wars over the last decades, they treat, most likely, you know, the police treating Americans like, you know, the enemies at war. So they shoot you, maybe, you know, if you gather a few people together and you don't obey. I mean, it's not that hard here in Switzerland, but no, you know, we don't that's why I'm saying internet, decentralized technology. People should be open. They should see the internet not as the main problem, because it's there. You cannot change it. But people should understand that internet, that decentralized systems are always more superior than centralized systems. Always. That we have crypto anarchists, that we have hackers who can hack the system. You can even today, with $5, you can buy, you can use software defined radio where you knock out with electromagnetic impulses, surveillance stations and so on. So, I mean, I truly believe in the future, those who are capable of taking self-responsibility, who also understand that we don't have to kill the king if we just can ignore the king, they will go for, we need, there is a new system out there. It's fully decentralized and it's internet based, and it's not going through the central banking system. It's not going through the banking system. It doesn't need to be centralized, because the whole infrastructure, the basis is fully decentralization. So, I mean, I don't know how all those different countries on this planet are going to cope with it, but I think it's a cultural topic, and I truly hope Switzerland was based, on the principles of subsidiarity, of decentralization, and I hope once people will realize what politics and the mass media has done to us to bring down that system, that they will ignore those evil sources, and really try to find and solve the issue on a local level, here in Switzerland, in different states and so on. And I think that's the way forward. And we can at the end of the day, even if they shut down global trade, whatever, I mean, the internet is the basis that we can trade, that we can communicate, that we can send wires on a global scale, which cannot be blocked as long as it's internet based. So I think the beginning is, private currencies. We're going to see people relocating within a country, maybe outside the country, into certain areas where the people, where they feel more secure, with people surrounded by them with the same values.
Right.
And the majority, the sheeps, they just will be butchered if they stay any longer under this dominant system, which is taking away their everything, crashing their civil liberties completely. You cannot, if you want to trade your freedom for security, you're going to lose both.
Well, that's right. And I've made this point recently, and I just think it's so important. Smaller communities, look, we've given away so much of our power through taxation, through central banking, through usury and interest rates. I mean, we've all essentially become enslaved to these banks, and people just need to consider a 30-year mortgage. Do you have any idea how much money you paid for that house and how much the money you've paid for your house? I've done the same thing. Most of that interest goes to the banks. Every time you use a credit card or debit card, the banks get money. They take a rake on every transaction. The banks are the problem. And unless we figure out a way to put an end to these usurious criminal banks, they will continue to control humanity. And what really concerns me about all this, so we had 2.2 trillion in stimulus, plus another 4 trillion in Fed discretionary spending, I guess, for whatever they're going to use that. Call that 6.2 trillion. If you divide that by all of the US citizens, it works out to somewhere around $18,000 per person. And I think people are, to some degree, being pacified by these $1,200 checks. $500 checks for your dependent children. That's what concerns me, is they can kill the economy. Look again at that Economist magazine. They can kill the economy, put everybody out of work, scare the hell out of people from an economic perspective, then pass trillions and trillions in stimulus and give people just a fraction of it. So the universal basic income idea and the idea of trillions in stimulus to save the people from what the bankers have caused is what has me so concerned, Claudio. And that's not pessimism, that's pragmatism.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a system of crony capitalism. So, the banks can only function if they got the if they got the support from the government. So it's basically, it's a revolving door, especially also in the States. You know, when you see how many people came from the finance into government, then they leave again, go to the military industrial complex. I mean, you know, this is a club. You know, it's a global club, and we are ain't in it. I think that's what Carlin said, and he's absolutely right.
Yeah, George Carlin.
Yeah, right. So I mean, and this is going to change, and you know, possibilities are there that you can protect yourself. People have to act. I think it's really important that you know that you reduce your exposure within the banking system. You know, that you go into hard assets. Can be anything. It can be base metals. You know, stuff which is cheap right now. Even also gold, silver, platinum. If you still get some, I mean, and you will. I mean. But I don't know. I mean, we can face capital exchange controls in the future. I mean, we don't know what these governments are capable of doing when we see what they. I mean, think about, you know, 3 weeks ago, and this situation we would have said it's not possible. It's completely insane. No one would do that, and now we are here, and it's happening. And so I think, yeah, people should be awake. They should think for themselves, and at the end of the day, the sheep will be butchered. And I don't hope that everyone will remain a sheep. So I think it's important that you stand up and that you say this is not right what the government is doing. You know, that you really try to open up the discussion. I mean, we cannot. I would never call for violent stuff, because I think out of violence, new violence is coming out. So it's not a solution. But people have to understand it. And if the majority remain dumb and ignore what's going on, and they still believe, you know, the nanny state will take care of me, and I don't have to think, and I have to don't take care of myself, I mean, they are in troubles. But I think all the others who understand what's going on, have an open mind. I think there are tools available that you can free yourself, and as I said, you know, that you really can ignore the king and survive in the future, and build up and make sure that your family and the beloved ones are on the safe side.
Well, I agree. Here's the other thing that concerns me too, is that if they shut down the economy for any length of time and people get dependent on these checks from the government for their very survival, people will be more apt to get in line and take a mandatory vaccine for the coronavirus if one is ushered out. And they could definitely use those checks, those stimulus checks, as the reason to get the vaccine. And if you don't get your vaccine, you don't get your check. So again, more top-down authoritarian control. And I pray to God that the Q thing is right, and that patriots are in control, and that Trump is somehow going to nationalize the Fed, and this will all work out really wonderfully. But I do believe that real patriots have to ask the hard questions, the tough questions. And that's all I wanted to do here today with you, Claudio. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much as well, Jean.
Well, I appreciate you, man. Do you want to remind people how they can find your work and get in touch with you or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to claudiograss.ch. So I also write regular articles. Right now, I'm working on an interview with Prince Michael of Liechtenstein. You know, asking him what he thinks about the whole situation, because to me, he is a natural authority. A sound guy, classic liberal, you know, he upholds the principles of liberty and freedom, and he also understands history, because, yeah, there is nothing new under the sun. You know, nothing, what we are witnessing right now, I mean, okay, it's unprecedented, but, you know, democide is basically when governments killed their own people, and in the last century, 130 million people have been killed by their own government. So we're not talking about sending them to war and then that they're being killed at war. It's really that the own government is going against their own people. And I truly believe that, you know, more people will die because of the political decisions undertaken by our governments to protect us from corona than people will die because of corona. And as I said, you know, I mean, I think this is really unique, this time that we are going through. Hopefully I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. And this world in 6 months will not be the place that I at least have the feeling that it will become.
Well, I hope you're wrong too. And I hope that this all ends really, really well for those that love sovereignty and love their families and love their country, which is most of the people on this planet. They love to divide and conquer us, as you know, Claudio. So the world has changed so much in just the past 3 months. you and I will have to talk again in another 3 months and in another 6 months, and we'll see. We'll dot those I's and cross those T's and have another conversation soon. So until then, thank you so much for your time.
Stay free, Sean.
Yeah, you too, brother. Stay healthy.
Thank you. You too.
All right. God bless. Our guest has been Claudio Grass. The website is claudiograss.ch. Great guy. Thank you so much, Claudio. And friends, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you all so very much. Thank you for your critical thinking. Thanks for sticking with us during this conversation. I know, look, it's much easier to just blindly trust a plan and pray that everything works out well. I am praying that everything works out well, but we're going to continue to ask the tough questions and take a look at the quantifiable facts as we process this stuff together. I really do value you guys, love you guys. Hats off to the Patriots. We know the deep state wants to topple our president. And this is just another card in their deck that's being played, I think, to do that. So let's all stick together, but let's also scream from the rooftops when we see things that we should be screaming about. Guys, for real news 24/7, you can visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless. Bye-bye.
This game has been coming for so long, and everybody in a position of power is part of the stacked deck.